There you get a look at some of the notable Raptor draft picks and trades, I might say, made on draft day over the franchise history. With a guy that's been around for every single one of these from day one, Jim Kelly. And Jim, another draft, another year. Give me your assessment. It seems like a lot of people are talking about there's good latent talent in this draft that might develop later on.
Yeah, you know, especially where we're drafting. We're at pick 13 this year. It's sort of a pick, you know, you're going to get players with talent. I think players who are going to be in the league, or they're all players we're looking at for a number of years. But I don't know if you have the standout talent that you see up in the top end of the draft. Picks 1, 2, especially with Turner and Wall, getting a lot of attention, and deservingly so, and they play that way. They look like they can fit into the league. They look like they can fit into an NBA position, and they bring that game immediately to whatever team takes them. As you get deeper in the draft, and that's where we are at number 13, it's a little bit more challenging. There are players who I think are young. I think basically the draft is a large group of underclassmen there, and I think because of that, and of course where we are at number 13, I don't think you're going to have the impact that you would have, say, in the top 5 or 6 picks. What do we do with that? Well, we've been studying hard. We've been bringing in each position here. We've got point guards, we had wings, we had bigs, and I think we're ready for everything here.
Jim, when you look at this draft, last year we saw a few point guards go early in the draft. What position do you think stands out from the workouts you've seen, from the talk around the NBA, in terms of positions that are a strength in this draft?
I think it's probably more wing players in this draft than anything else. There are a lot of bigs, but bigs tend to take a little bit longer, especially if they're not in the top 10 to develop. But I think there's a good crop of wings. Bigs would be in back of that, and I think point guard's probably third if you wanted to rate them 1, 2, and 3.
Jim, a sliding scale here, because with free agency obviously impacting the draft. I mean, Boston a few years ago trades a pick and they get the big 3, and until somebody wrecks the draft, you must have a plan in place. When you put the board together, how much do you look at what the people in front of you do and who they leave on the board that you might not think would have been there initially?
Well, that especially is true when you get down to 13, and there could be a player there that maybe you weren't able to bring in.
Right.
And maybe you didn't figure that he was in your thinking. So first thing that goes in your mind, well, why is he there?
Yeah.
Did he do something wrong? Is he unhealthy? You check the medicals right away, and all this takes place in about 20 minutes time. So we hope that we have a feel for who might slip and who might slide down in a draft, and then the eternal discussion comes up. Is he too good to leave on the board? Right. I mean, do we have to take that player just because, well, he should have been 7 or 8, and we know we saw him during the year, and maybe we didn't consider him in the last month or so. And then that goes back to your talent, not your talent evaluation, that the workout shouldn't be the end-all if you're going to take a player or not. It's the body of work. You've seen him for 3 or 4 years. We've seen everyone here in the draft at least a half dozen times. So you got to go back on your sources and what you think you know about the player, and can he fit in with what we need?
Now, Jim, you guys have had a few players come in over the last couple of weeks. You've been evaluating the talent. Has any player really jumped out to you and been an eye-opener based on, you've seen the body of work, but when you got to see them up close, interact with them, talk to them, see how they communicate with people, have you been impressed with anybody specifically?
You know, we haven't had the type of workout where one player came in and said, wow, he's a Raptor. That guy we have to get on our team. We've had a few guys who've come in, and usually the more senior players, the guys who've been in school a little bit more, the Patrick Patterson, who was in today. We had Udo in probably last week or the week before in there. These guys are a little bit older, and they have a little bit more experience. Aldridge, called Aldridge too, a little more experience about them as well. But I think you have to look at that, and it's a big part of taking a player, but I think you also look at what they do on the floor, and you try to combine the two.
Jim, we talked about this, and it's one of the big things in the draft. Best player available, but also somebody that fits needs. If you had to assess the team needs right now and kind of match them up with the draft, what would your assessment be there?
Well, that's a good question. You know, team needs, and we're in a little bit of a situation where we're trying to change and improve the roster. And as you get closer to draft day, you get closer to trade time.
Yes.
And those things happen, and they not only the players that you might lose, but also the players you might come back to your roster there. So I think you have to take those into consideration. I don't think I'm letting out any trade secrets. We're a pretty active team on the telephones right now. It's a little bit like a final exam in school. We have 6 or 7 players we really like. If it comes down to best player, best athlete, we know who we're going to take. If we make a transaction, say, well, maybe we need a big now, we know which big guy. But I think you have to be ready in 3 or 4 different areas when you get to draft day.
Jim, thanks for your time. As always, good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
As we've said many times, the draft is about potential, Sherm, but it's also about other things that happen on that day, trades, trading picks, making moves. I think back to the Boston Celtics in 2008 or 2007, how they were disappointed that they didn't get the pick, which would have been Greg Oden or Kevin Durant, but made some moves and won the title the next year. So it's about more than just those players that are being picked. It's about moves that are made.
Well, you're right. There's a lot of moving parts that are involved in drafting a player or from a position that you have to take into consideration. And there's a lot of hoopla, but the reality is when the dust settles, it's a team that makes the right decision based on what they have, the talent available, and how they package everything to make the franchise better, as Boston did in 2007.
All right, you got to keep it here because we'll be covering every pick, every decision. Raptors NBA TV, your home for the draft.